So this week, I just want to talk a little bit about conflict during arrangements. Next week, I'm going to talk about more, when fights break out and things like that in kind of the big scheme, but during arrangements. So I'm going to touch on two areas. One where the family has conflicts with each other, and the second would be where the family has conflicts with us as the arranger during arrangements. So the family having conflict with each other usually is just about not agreeing on what their decisions are that they're making. The big one is cremation versus burial. That's the big one, that and finances, but the cremation versus burial, it's not something you can really help them decide for the most part. You have to kind of give them the information on both sides, the benefits and the the kind of pros and cons of burial and cremation, help them to understand what they can do with each. You don't have to have a full service with the burial or embalming with the burial. You don't have to just do a cremation. You can do a visitation and service. So letting them know all the options rather than just there being a full traditional service versus direct cremation. Kind of fill in that whole gray area for them. Say, you know what, I'm going to step out of the room, let you talk, make some decisions, and I'll come back in like 5 minutes. This is a huge thing with all that I'm going to discuss. Never be afraid to say, I'm just going to step out of the room and let you discuss this. I want to give you your privacy. I want you to feel free to talk with each other without worrying about me, being part of it. Let me give you a few minutes and just give them that time. It's really important to do. Don't be in a hurry. Don't feel like you have to pressure them for an answer, because sometimes they just need to talk. And especially if they're fighting with each other, just remove yourself from the situation. It's not worth you staying there and being part of it, because they're going to try and get you to take sides or to say something that you're probably not comfortable saying, because your opinion on cremation versus burial when a family is fighting over it does not matter. It's their opinion, their decision. They have to be on the page with it. And the majority has to be on the page. It might be a situation where you're sitting with a bunch of kids, but the parent has come and filled out the form to designate Bob Smith from down the road to be the one that decides. And they may just be figuring this out when they sit down for arrangements. Well, that's going to piss them off, that they don't get a say in whether mom gets cremated or not. So you're going to run into a lot of different situations that weren't in play even 5-10 years ago like that. So finances is another big one that people are going to fight over. You sit down and there's like 10 kids. If every kid contributed $1,000, you would pay for the funeral, or $500, or a couple $100. The funeral would be paid for. But there's usually like one successful child who, is the business person, or they just happen to have a lot of money. And a lot of times what will happen is these kids all sit down together and they all look to the one kid like he's going to pay it or she's going to pay it. So then there's this well, I'm not going to do it. Why aren't you contributing? And so they can get into these battles. And that's just one example, but they can get into these battles over who is going to pay. And it's not up to you. It's up to them. It's another situation where you need to say, here is the final total of the bill. I'm going to step out. I need someone to take responsibility to sign this contract and pay me in full. And then I need a secondary signature also. A lot of contracts require 2 signatures. It's also really good to do if you have a lot of kids, to have a second person that's liable, just in case that first person doesn't come through. So put it back in their court. Don't get flustered by the situations. Just because they're all pissy and they're fighting with each other, don't get flustered by it. Step out, come back 5 minutes later, and see what they've decided. Every time I have done this, 100% of the time I walk back in, contract is signed, credit cards are out, checkbook is out, it's being paid. Decision has been made. They can still be upset about whatever they decided, but as long as somebody has agreed to it, your responsibility on the financial side is done. You're never going to make people happy that weren't happy coming in there. Usually in these situations, there was already a family dynamic that was disrupted before this death occurred. And this death is just going to put the flame under it and make it worse during every little step, usually people are going to play nice up until the person is buried or the person is cremated. And then crap is going to hit the fan in their world. I hear a lot of times from people, man, you should have seen what happened at the arrangement, because that's when crap got ugly. Or not at arrangement, I'm sorry, at the luncheon, because that's when crap got ugly. And that's when people started, fighting or doing their thing. Quentin, are you never going to deal with this? Aren't you going to school, Quentin, for this? So, there's a lot of different things. If people aren't agreeing on caskets, you have to just leave the room and say, you know what, I can give you a whole catalog. I can show you options. I can bring the caskets in if you don't have them right there. Say, I can bring them in so you can physically see them. I did that with a family that wanted a blue casket and they couldn't decide. So I brought in all 3 blue casket choices that we had. So you're just doing embalming. Gotcha. All 3 casket choices laid out. It's just kind of how it is. You step up and provide what you can, but they have to be the ones to make the final decisions. Another thing that people will have a lot of conflict over with sometimes service options, if they want visitation, if they don't want visitation, if they want service, if they don't want service, leave it in their court, let them play it out, let them figure it out, give them the options. Now, when they have conflict with you, this is a bigger one. This is where your defensive side is easily going to turn on, or your emotions may turn on, where they may put you in tears because they're being jerks to you. And I need you to remember, step back and remember that they are hurting. They have lost somebody. There's probably some drama going on back home behind the scenes here. It's not you they're attacking always. It is the situation, it is the emotion, it is everything. And I know that's so much easier said than done, but it's the truth. You have to remember, you kind of get taken as a punching bag sometimes when it comes to this. And I know all the other directors will attest to this. You're going to have a family that just comes at you, and it's not validated, you didn't deserve it, but you just say, okay, I will do my best to make this better, or I will do what I can for you, or yes, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's the Chick-fil-A answer. My pleasure. My pleasure. So it's hard to do, but you have to do it. You kind of, eat crow or whatever that phrase is. So the areas that families are going to probably attack you on, money, and money. There's other ones, but yes, money is the huge one. It brings out the worst in everybody in the world, doesn't it? So when you're sitting down with a family and they don't like the prices you're charging them, my number one piece of advice is do not cave on the money. Do not get scared by charging these prices and them giving pushback, and so then you start giving them discounts. The moment you open the door to give discounts, they've won. And they are going to take and take and take as much as they can from you. Because you have shown them that if they push you, you're going to give, and you're going to cave, and you're going to back down. So the number one thing that I say when I'm with families that are kind of pushing and kind of arguing with me on pricing and saying maybe they don't have money or they don't whatever, which we're going to do a whole video on how to work on, collecting money from families essentially. But so if they're pushing you, it is easy. This is the easiest answer ever, because you can do this no matter what funeral home you're at. Folks, this is our general price list. And we treat every family the same way, with the same care and with the same respect. So whether a millionaire family walks in or whether an indigent family walks in, we use the same pricing structure so that we know we are treating every family fairly. So we can't discount something for one family if we don't discount it for every family. So you have to go in with that mentality that you are doing everything the same for every family, because people talk. And Mrs. Smith gets a deal from you. She goes to the coffee shop and is talking to Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones' husband dies, she's going to come in pushing you as well because she wants that same deal. Remember, if you stay on the same course and you act fairly with everybody, you're not going to have issues down the road because everybody is going to have been treated the same, and you're going to know that. There are definitely situations where you cut a deal with a family. These are extreme situations. Happens like once every few years, I think, if you don't do a ginormous call volume. So those are completely separate, but stick to your guns, stick to what you know, stick to the price list. People also come in sometimes, and this is one where I've had battles with family, that mom told us it was all taken care of. You are trying to steal money from us. Because mom had, walked in the door at visitation once, said, "Hey, Mr. Smith, funeral director, I want to be buried out at Jones Cemetery. Make sure I'm buried nice." She goes home and tells her kids, "Oh, I've already talked to Mr. Smith. It's all handled and it's all taken care of." And to them, that means mom's paid everything. It's all handled. She's all set, taken care of. So when the family comes in, they are like, "Oh, well, it's all handled." And there's not even a file started for her because she never met with the funeral director. She never put money in. And they think that there's money that you're hiding from them. I've had this happen at least a dozen times. At least. I've had families who have left arrangements so they could go call other funeral homes to make sure there wasn't a pre-funding. And that's great, because I would rather they know that there's no pre-funding somewhere else than, work with us and then find the money later. But people sometimes will be under the assumption that there's money with you. Or mom did pre-fund, but then got going to the casino too much, or whatever the situation, got QVC'd too many times, which both of those are real situations I've encountered, and needed more of her funds. And so she cashed in her trust at the funeral home little by little, and there was nothing left in it. So when the family came in, we had to tell them that she spent it all. She had gotten it all back and she had spent it all. This happens also with life insurance, where they come in with policies and you have to tell them there's no money. And you're the one telling them this. It's, kill the messenger. They get pissed at you because you're the one telling them, unfortunately. Same goes for when people come in, if they are under like state aid and so forth, they think that there's money from state aid, and there's not. And so when you tell them that they have to pay for a funeral, actually, they're pissed. Or when you tell them that there is not all these veterans benefits, they're pissed and they don't believe you. I just talked to someone recently that they had a family come in and was super pissed because the lady believed there was veterans benefits and that the VA was going to bury her husband at no cost. She didn't believe him. She went to other funeral homes because she believed that there was a free burial for her husband because he was a Vietnam vet, and it didn't exist. So sometimes we are the bearers of reality and people don't want to hear it. They don't want to know it. So that does create conflict. It does create hurt feelings, and it does create situations that are not pleasant. Well, they do. They want a piece. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, but they forget that we have to make money too. Yeah, is a huge misconception with this segment of the population that we make tons of money on funerals. But the reality of how a business runs, most people don't understand. People don't understand overhead and having to have staff on call 24/7 and having to have vehicles at the ready and having to function with an unknown income where you may get 10 calls one month and 0 calls the next month. Well, you have to be able to run your business on a volume so that evens out across those 2 months so your bills can be paid for both months. And it's not that you're charging one family more, it's just that number has to be blanketed across everywhere. And once you explain a few of the basics without getting into too much business with people, they're like, well, I guess that does make sense. You do have to have an overhead. You do have to be on call 24/7. You do have to keep your doors open when there's no death call. You do have to be on the ready. And so once people understand that, they usually are like, oh, okay. People that don't are never going to understand it. So then the last one that people may get upset with you during arrangements is when their time slots aren't available. So you'll get families that walk in and they say, well, mom died at like 2 a.m. We've already talked to the pastor. We have everything set for visitation tomorrow, service the next day. And so that's when we want to do everything. Well, you already have visitation and a service and can't facilitate it at that time. And so you tell the family, I'm sorry, but we cannot facilitate at that time. So we're going to need to move to a different time slot. They get pissed because they've already started telling people. They've already posted on Facebook. They've already, put the news out that that's when they want to do things without ever consulting you. It's their bad, but it's your problem. So rather than them go to a different funeral home, which does happen sometimes, you try to accommodate. Maybe the person was involved at their church, so maybe you move the visitation to the church. So if your building is busy, move it to their church with your staff present there. Have the service at the church. So there's different options, or like if you have 2 chapels that are only 5 miles apart or something, move it to your other location. So try and accommodate them the best way you can without having them feel like they need to leave to get what it is they want. So I guess takeaways from conflict during arrangements. Step away and take a breath, especially if you are an apprentice and say you're sitting in with your supervisor or whatever, and you're getting flustered because a family's pushing you and a family's doing things. Say, I'm just going to take a moment. I want to step outside with, Bob, and we'll be right back in. Don't say we need to talk about something or anything. Just step outside, refresh their coffee if you need to, whatever you got to do. Step outside and talk to, your mentor or sponsor about what it is, how they would like you to proceed. Every funeral home is going to be different. I can tell you all day long what I think, but your funeral home may have your own set of rules. You may throw discounts at families at your funeral home all day long. That may be your thing. I think it just gets you in trouble, but that's my opinion. A lot of this is just opinion. But it's tried and true opinion on my point, and it's where I've seen things go well and get better. So I'm someone who likes challenges. And I think that's why I like the arrangement so much, because you're sitting down with these brand new people usually, and if there's conflict, it's a challenge. And I love that challenge of finding the answer to the conflict and having a resolution and having everybody happy at the end. It's not always going to be that way, by the way. But when you can help people find a resolution and make it work and get to your goal of a signed contract with people on board with everything and things, and it's good. I think in the funeral world, you've got the embalming and you've got the arrangement. And these are your 2 areas of challenges. Embalming to me is like golf. I hate golf. And the one reason I hate it is because I can practice every day all the time and I can get better, but it doesn't mean I'm ever going to excel. Because I can be the best golfer in the world and then still have a bad game. So I feel like embalming is the same way. You can study it, you can practice it, you can be 20,000 bodies in, and you can still have a body that just goes wrong because you don't control all of the areas. But I feel like arranging, you control so much of it. You let people think they're in control, but you control so much. And so I feel like I love that area so much more. I keep a super low accounts receivable when I'm doing arranging. I'm usually excelling at working with the families. It's just an area that I know I can see when I'm doing well. And embalming, I feel like you can be erratic in some of it, just like golf. And that's why I hate golf. So just put me in a cart. I'll drive you around. I'll drink a beer. You can golf. We're good. But I do love embalming because it is challenging, but there's days I'm just like, I'm frustrated because you do everything you can and still the body is leaking or not its best. So that's my 2 cents on that. Other things, so step away, take a breath. You are not a mediator for family drama. If there's family drama, step away. Let them figure it out. You are never going to fix whatever that drama is going on within the family, because you don't know the whole story. You don't know what's been transpiring. This could be a 30-year festering thing, and it's not going to go away. So don't think you can ever fix it. You're not a psychologist. You're not a, clinical social worker here. Just step back and let them figure it out. Get them through making those arrangements and getting the answers you need and resolving what needs to be resolved. And then, thanks, Laura. I thought of that on my drive to where I'm at right now, because I was like, gosh, that's really perfect. And then you're also not the banker. You are not a lender. You are not an accountant. You are not there to figure out their money issues either. You need to know where they sit when it comes to money. You need to know what they have to bring to the table, but you don't need to know all of their worries. You don't need to know about their second mortgage and their this and their that. That's their issues. You need to let them figure out how financially they can bring something to the table, if that's possible. And then if they've gone to the bank and can't get, a loan, or if they don't have the credit cards to put it on, if they don't have the cash flow, and then if they can't borrow the money from someone else, or they can't tap into a 401k, or they can't do this, or they can't do that, then have a rediscussion. But if somebody's not willing to go and do those things, if they are in a bind, but they have finances available that they can go borrow at the bank, they can put it on a credit card, they can take from their 401k, they can do this, they can do that, and they don't want to, that's not your problem. Then they need to relook at the plans that they're making, and they need to do less, unfortunately, than what they can do, because they don't have the funds to do what it is they're wanting. They can't walk into any car dealership and go buy a totally tricked out vehicle if they can only afford a basic model. It just doesn't happen. So, you just have to have very honest discussions with the family, and it can get ugly, and it's money. Money is just evil. It truly is, and it brings out the worst in people. But being honest and letting people know that you're with them, you want to help them, and that you're on their side. You're not just sitting there trying to get money from them. You're trying to help them find a solution to the situation that you guys are in together. And saying that and verbalizing that will go a long way with a family. And that puts you on the same page rather than on opposite sides of a table. So that is I think my biggest at the end is letting people know, I'm with you here. I am trying to care for you. I am trying to care for your loved one. Let's do this together. Let's get through this. I want you to walk away from here the most comfortable you can be with what you're spending. Because at the end of the day, I don't want you to walk away from here with a huge financial burden and the grief of losing your mom. You don't need both, so let's figure this out. Saying that and doing it, but they have to figure it out at the end of the day. It's not up to you to cut your bottom line to fix their problem that they're in, or to fix the situation that they're in. But you can help them, and you can be on the same page with them. So I think that's my gist for the day, guys. I have to go run my errands now and do my stuff. I swear I'm just trying to catch up, and it's starting to rain, which stinks. But I hope you guys have a great weekend.